Palmer Tom's on the line to talk Georgia football. And of course, June is going to be huge in the recruiting game, running down position by position. Go to the defensive line. The difference here, I think, in terms of numbers is, of course, typically a 5 starting offensive lineman. You want to mix in about 2 more. Typically, that's kind of the mindset, but they just come in waves on the defensive side. In the trenches, and Georgia's been as good as anyone in bringing those guys in, and they're going to go after a slew of them again here in 22.
Yeah, and along the same lines of the numbers game, they've already got a couple of defensive line commits. Bear Alexander, 5-star defensive tackle out of Fort Worth. He's Georgia's highest rated prospect overall. And so they will have him in for a visit, unofficial visit, first day of June. They'll have him in June 1st, next Tuesday. He is certainly a guy that I think is going to go see some of these other campuses. When you're in that, middle of Texas area, you're going to be highly pursued by some of these other schools. So I think Texas A&M is hot on his trail. I would guess that he's probably going to go see the Aggies and see the campus that they've got, what they've got to offer in College Station. And I think there's certainly going to be plenty of schools after him. So it's big for Georgia to get him in early. Not only on the commit board, one of 12 commits that they have, but to get him in visiting. Tyree West is another defensive lineman that they have committed. And so those two guys, they want to build on top of those, and they've got, plenty of prospects. Travis Shaw, 5-star out of North Carolina. He's a big time prospect for them. Michael Williams out of Columbus, Georgia, 5-star prospect. Looking at further down the board, you've got some guys that they would love to take. Christian Miller, also out of Georgia. Aaron Bryant is a 3-star guy that they will have in for an official visit. And then, some 5-star talent guys like Shamar Stewart and the number 1 player in the country, Walter Nolan. They're going to try and get those guys in for visits. Stewart will be there later in the month. Nolan has kind of, I don't know that he has set some of his visits, but he has said in the past that he would like to get to Athens. I think he unofficially visited earlier this spring just to kind of see the campus, and obviously wasn't able to interact with the coaches. So, Kirby would like to get him back on campus to be able to interact with him face to face and, show him what they've got. I mentioned Bryant. He's a 3-star defensive tackle out of South Haven, Mississippi. He will be in for an official visit that first weekend. So, Georgia's going to be hitting the defensive line hard, and Trey Scott's gonna make himself some money with the way that he's recruiting this defensive line class.
So you've got all those guys that are either on the interior or definitely on the defensive end role, but then you got a Nate White, as you talked about, who may stand up as an outside linebacker out of Philadelphia or may have his hand in the ground, but Georgia going up to Philadelphia to hopefully reel him in.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Kirby Smart has recruited that Philadelphia area very well. Brought in DeAndre Swift out of there, as well as Mark Webb, a cousin of Swift's. And then you look at this most recent class and the transfer that they've got out of West Virginia. He's also from that Philadelphia area. So I believe he was high school teammates with White. And so, I think Georgia feels good about where they're at with him, but, obviously they're going to want to get him on campus, and they will have him on campus for an official visit June 11th, that second weekend in the month of June. So certainly, I think when you look at recruiting is a game of looking at what you have currently and what you are going to need, expecting what you're going to need. And I think, Georgia expects to need some guys to play that, wide defensive end, stand-up, edge rusher type player, because in the past, that's been a room that has been loaded for defensive coordinator Dan Lanning. In the past with Azeez Ojulari, Jermaine Johnson, well, they're both gone. And then, looking at this year, they have Nolan Smith as well as Adam Anderson. Those two guys very well could be gone if they have the seasons that Georgia fans hope and expect them to have in 2021. So, I think that is a room that they've got to address. They've got a couple of guys on board there already, and I think, but you can never have enough talent in those edge rushers. I mentioned the guys that they have already. They've got edge rusher Darius Smith already on board. He's a 4-star guy out of Georgia. And then they've got a couple of other guys committed to play linebacker. A lot of times you see these linebacker commits. They could play inside, they could play outside. It kind of just depends on the need that they have and when they get on campus. And so Jalen Walker, he's a 4-star commit, top 50 player in the country. He probably projects more as an inside linebacker than an outside guy, but very, very well has that skill set where he could play on the outside if needed, as well as CJ Washington, who's a longtime commit of theirs out of Cedartown, Georgia, 4-star guy, top 15 linebacker in the country.
Got Palmer Thomas on the line. Sorry about that. A little edit there. See, this is the other problem I have because of this call-in show. This thing is always connected. As soon as I hook up my audio board, regardless, I can't do anything. I could shut off the phone. But anyway, here we go. Palmer Thomas, of course, on the line, joining us to break down Georgia football as he always does. We always appreciate Palmer giving up his time because he's going to be one busy guy when it comes June 1st, and specifically June 4th. That's the weekend that everybody jumps on campus for the first time. You mentioned, Palmer, about special talent, but also the fit being right, and that makes one of the reasons why Kamari Wilson is such a prized prospect for Kirby Smart.
Yeah, like a lot of these other positions, they've got a couple of guys committed that could play in the secondary and probably will. Wilson being that number 1 safety in the country out of IMG Academy. That's a school that we're hearing a lot about for Georgia, which makes sense because Georgia's bringing in the top prospects and IMG's producing those top prospects. Wilson will be on campus for an official visit this first weekend, June 4th, as well as and several of these other IMG teammates of his will be there June 18th. We mentioned Tyler Booker already. Wilson being a safety, but then you've got other guys in the secondary as well. Keon Sabb, who's the number 1 athlete in the country, 5-star prospect there, and Dalen Everett, 5-star cornerback out of IMG, as well as Jihad Campbell. He's an edge rusher. He will be there June 18th as well, also out of IMG. So that's 4 IMG kids that they've got coming June 18th, and then Wilson coming June 4th. Some big time prospects that they would like to get out of Bradenton, Florida. And, I think the hope is that it can kind of start with Wilson. Georgia has taken the crystal ball projection lead for him. He's 5-star prospect, number 1 safety in the country, 24 player overall. Georgia currently holds all 4 of the crystal ball projections for Wilson, including a couple of 247 experts. I feel like that's a player that they feel confident about, but obviously they're getting him on campus that first weekend with several other players that they feel confident about. A lot of Georgia fans are expecting that first weekend to be a big one, and it certainly is going to be for Georgia. Opening up and showing these kids campus for the first time. Since they last got there, Georgia has moved into a new $80 million football facility that'll add on to the indoor practice facility that they've got. The coaches moved in there just after spring practice. Players moved into a new locker room in there, and so I think this is an exciting time for Georgia, and it really does start that first weekend with guys like Wilson coming into town.